I had the comms board memorized down to its blink patterns, so when the third probe pinged us with the same handshake as the first two, I knew before the computer confirmed it. We were being measured against something. Not threatened, measured. The Meridian Reach was 11 hours past the marker buoy the charts called the edge of contested approach. 3 escorts holding loose formation off our flanks, and ahead of us a system that didn't behave like a system. No transponders, no drift. Every rock in that asteroid belt sat exactly where some unseen hand wanted it, spaced like teeth in a gear, and the silence on every frequency had a quality to it I can only describe as patient. Not empty. Patient. Anything from the rocks, a conquilingvist? Captain Reyes asked without turning from the forward display. He'd taken to using my full name on approach days. Said it kept him sharp. Still nothing active. But I'm reading structure in the spacing. That's not natural, sir. Somebody's holding those rocks in formation. Drone network. If it is, it's not broadcasting like one. I adjusted the gain, pulled another pass through the noise floor. It's listening, Captain. Just listening. We'd been warned, in the dry language the diplomatic corps used for things it didn't understand, that this system belonged to something called the Lattice, a name picked up third hand from a trade convoy that had skirted the edge of the territory and come back changed in some way nobody could quite name. The convoy's captain had described it to debriefers as a machine god that did not believe in gods, only in correctness. Reyes had read me that line twice before we crossed the marker, like he wanted to see if it would mean something different the second time. It didn't. Not until the rocks started moving. They didn't scatter. They reorganized, smooth, unhurried, the whole belt reshaping itself into a lattice in the geometric sense, a grid of crossing lines with our 4 ships sitting at one node of it like a value waiting to be solved. My board lit with a signal so clean it barely registered as foreign. No carrier guay boble, no compression artifacts. Just information, offered the way you'd hand someone a fact they hadn't asked for yet. Receiving structure transmission, I said, and my voice came out steadier than I expected, because some part of me had already decided this was simply data, and data was my job. Translating now. The Matrix gave it to us in our own syntax inside 4 seconds, which told me more about the thing sending it than the message itself did. Classification requested. Vessel type, unknown. Biological signature, unknown. Intent vector, unresolved. State your function. It wants a category, I said. It's not asking who we are. It's asking what bucket to put us in. Reyes came to stand behind my chair, hands loose at his sides, the posture he used when he wanted the bridge to see calm and not feel it. Then we tell the truth. We're a diplomatic vessel. Function, contact, and assessment. I sent it. The reply came back even faster than the first. Function diplomatic noted. Prior precedent. 41 species presenting this function. All resolved to one of 3 subordinate patterns. Supplication, negotiation for resource, or deception preceding incursion. Select which pattern applies. Marsh, our junior tactical officer, made a small sound somewhere between a laugh and a flinch. It's giving us a multiple choice. It's not being rude, I said, half to myself, working through what the message actually meant underneath its flat phrasing. It's telling us it's already solved every species that ever came through here. It's not asking us to explain ourselves. It's asking us to confirm which of its existing answers we are. Reyes's jaw set in that particular way that meant he'd heard something he didn't like the shape of. And if we don't fit any of the 3, then I think we find out what its 4th answer looks like. He didn't tell me to send anything yet. He stood there a moment, reading the silence the way a good captain reads silence. And then he said, quiet enough that only I caught it over the hum of the board. Send this. Function, none of the above. I typed it exactly that plain. No flourish, no padding, the way you'd answer a question from someone who'd find decoration insulting. None of the above. The grid of rocks outside went still. Not power down, stopped, the way a thought stops mid-sentence. For 11 seconds, nothing on any channel moved. And I have sat in enough first contact briefings to know that 11 seconds of silence from a system that answers in 4 is not caution. It's the sound of a machine running the same calculation twice because the first answer came back wrong. When the lattice spoke again, the syntax had changed. Less certain, more words, where before it had used the fewest possible. Request clarification. None of the above is not a valid response within model parameters. All observed species conform to one of three behavioral archetypes upon contact. Restate function using provided categories. It's not letting it go, Marsh said. It can't, I said, and I felt something settle in a place in my chest that I'd later try to describe to Reyes as relief, though at the time it felt closer to vertigo. Its whole model assumes those three patterns are exhaustive. We just told it there's a fourth. It doesn't have room in its own logic to hold that and keep operating the way it has been. Reyes crouched slightly to look at the readout himself, like seeing the words on the glass might change their weight. What happens to a machine like that when its categories don't close? I don't know, sir. I don't think it does either. He straightened and gave the order I'd been waiting for since the marker buoy, the one that wasn't aggression and wasn't surrender, the one that was just truth laid bare for something that had never had a look at an unsolved variable before. Drop the cloak on the escorts. All of it. Let's see exactly what it's looking at. Full resolution, nothing held back. If it wants data to close its model, give it all the data there is. The escorts shed their distortion fields in sequence. 3 ships blooming in a clean radar return one after another. Hull plating and weapon ports, and the small human imperfections of scoring and weld seam and old battle scarring that no smooth machine hull would carry. We weren't hiding anything anymore. We were handing the lattice the entire problem, raw, and trusting that the problem itself was the answer it couldn't categorize away. The response this time took 41 seconds. I counted every one of them. Revised assessment in progress. Observed vessel construction, inefficient by standard metrics. Observed crew signature, biological, fragile, redundant systems absent. Observed behavior upon contact. No supplication detected. No resource demand detected. No concealment detected following direct query. Archetype match, 0%. Holding enforcement protocol. Awaiting model revision. It's not attacking, Marsh said, like he didn't quite trust the sentence as he said it. It can't, I said again, because that was the truth of it, and I wanted Reyes to hear it plainly. Its enforcement doctrine is built on those 3 patterns. We don't match any of them, and a thing this rational won't act on a model it knows is broken. It would rather hold position forever than enforce a rule it can't justify to itself. Reyes exhaled, slow, the first real breath I'd seen him take since the marker buoy. Then we wait it out. We hold here, we don't advance, we don't retreat. We let it sit with the part of itself that doesn't add up. We held for 6 hours. I logged every transmission, watched the rock grid outside our viewport stay locked in its frozen geometry, watched the lattice's signal traffic spike and reseed in patterns that looked, to my untrained eye, almost like distress, though I'd never have used that word in the report. What I wrote instead was more accurate and somehow stranger. Sustained recursive self-query, no resolution achieved, enforcement withheld pending model integrity. The lattice never fired. It never asked us to leave. In the 7th hour, it sent one final transmission, shorter than any before it, stripped down to something that read less like doctrine and more, almost like a question a person might ask. Model revision required. Category human, unresolved. Archetype, none. Reclassification pending. You may proceed. Reyes had me log that transmission twice, in 2 separate systems, because he said some sentences are worth keeping in more than one place. Then he gave the order to come about, slow and unthreatening. No triumph in the maneuver. No message sent back beyond a simple acknowledgement that we understood and would respect the boundary we'd been given. I've thought about that exchange more times than I can count in the years since. Turn it over the way you turn over a stone that doesn't quite fit any drawer you own. The lattice wasn't beaten. Nobody fired a shot. Nobody postured. Nobody made a speech the history books would want to quote. It simply met something that didn't resolve, and it had enough discipline or enough humility built into its cold architecture to stop rather than force an answer that wasn't true. That's the part one tell people when they ask what first contact was like. Not that we won. We didn't win anything. We just stood there, plainly ourselves, and made a perfect machine admit there was a category in the universe it hadn't accounted for, and that the category was us.